Hello, metalheads all over the world, boys and girls, children of all ages, and welcome back to yet another episode of the Horsemen Podcast, episode 92. And yes, only a week removed from the last episode we did, and here we are with a brand new one. And today is my esteemed honor and pleasure to have on the show, considering we've been talking back and forth for months now. Please welcome to the show the badass frontman from one of my favorite thrash bands now, Mezzrow. Please welcome Ulf Pettersson. How's it going, sir?
Hello, nice to be here. Very cool. And as you said, we've been working on this for a while.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a work in progress, no matter who I
Yeah.
get on the show, but it's always worth it in the end, especially from musicians and frontmen that I personally appreciate. So,
Mm.
so yeah, for those who are watching that are not familiar, and as I keep saying now on most of my videos, I keep pushing this band because I feel this band truly deserves more fans. So, Mezzrow, of course, Swedish thrash band that I have grown to love ever since checking out album number 2, Summon Thy Demons, back in 2023. It was my number 5 on my year-end list for 2023, and it was my favorite thrash album of the year. And then, of course, following that up with the new one, Embrace the Awakening, which was even higher in 2025. So, yeah, it's just been an awesome journey. And then, of course, picking up the debut, then came the killing. So, basically, I have everything from you guys thus far. That is until something new comes out, and then I'll have to hunt that down as well.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool.
Thank you very much. So, really, to kind of get going on this episode, in terms of like for questions and whatnot, I have a select number here, but the first one I always ask to anybody who's on the show for the first time, and that is all about the origin of the metalhead, as we call it, about how someone got into music and then eventually metal. So, for you, when was your first musical discovery, and then when did metal enter your life?
It was a really long time ago because I'm kind of old, and it was like mid 70s, and I bought there was it was an English rock band or hard rock band called the Sweet, and they were kind of big in Europe, especially in Europe, back in the 70s, sort of glammy
Hmm.
perhaps, but then went over to straight rock or hard rock. And I bought their album Sweet Fanny Adams. It's a classic. Heathen has done a cover of Set Me Free. That's the Sweet. So they were really good, I thought. And of course, Kiss. I bought the Alive record, as many have done.
Hmm.
A lot of people in my age who's listening to hard rock and metal has started out with Kiss, and often Alive, especially Alive, or Alive 2 as well. So that's how it started, I think. And then things got a bit heavier. So I checked out Deep Purple and Sabbath after that. And then it's all, I found Judas Priest at the end of the 70s. And my favorite record of all time is Unleashed in the East, especially, the latest one with the bonus tracks. And I have all those records on vinyl as well, and the Japan pressing. And then I got into the more heavier side, I think, because if you listen to Unleashed in the East, it starts off with Exciter, and that's sort of started the thrash thing or the speed metal thing.
Yeah.
Uh, and then I just started looking for heavier and heavier stuff. So in the beginning of the 80s, it was like Venom, especially Venom. They were big here in Europe at the beginning of the 80s, and Merciful Fate, of course, and Exciter, actually. I really like the two first albums. They kind of I'm still listening to them, actually.
Oh yeah. I actually did see Exciter a couple of years ago, the week before I turned 30, and met the guys. I met Dan, Allen, and Daniel DK. They're guitarists because DK is a good friend of mine. We've been friends since 2020. But yeah, it was fun to get to meet those guys. Super nice guys, and they crushed it live, playing with
Yeah.
Midnight, Wraith, and Hellwitch at the Legends Club in Cincinnati. That's no longer there, and that was my first ever club show. Was Exciter. So because I've only been to a few shows in my life, it's been a very recent thing for me going to shows after years of hesitation. I finally pulled the trigger and I saw Megadeth in
Mm.
2022. And then the year after that, for my 29th birthday, I saw Gojira and Mastodon.
Gojira. Mhm.
And then it was Exciter, Midnight Wraith, Hellwitch. And then last year was the first time I went to two shows. I went to the Pantera Amon Amarth tour and the Judas Priest, Alice Cooper, Corrosion of Conformity tour. And both shows
Mhm.
were awesome. So right now I'm basically playing the waiting game to find out what other shows are coming in the Cincinnati, Columbus area, and like who's playing and like what's the package and all that. Because personally, I don't want to go to another Megadeth Five Finger Death Punch show because I would only go just for Megadeth and just leave.
Yeah.
Which that was the case when I saw Megadeth, but that's neither here nor there.
Five Finger Death Punch, kind of boring.
Oh,
I think they're
beyond
very
boring.
good.
Beyond
Yeah.
boring. Thank you. Somebody's with me for once on this.
Yeah, I never listened to them actually.
I
Not
did
my.
at one point. I did at one point as a teenager because I was in high school when they got started, and I didn't think they were bad back then. But after that, I no. I'm just gonna leave it at that. Is no.
No,
But
same here.
yeah. But talking about the 80s and actually into the 90s, because Sweden, like, really ever since the 80s, a lot of people, myself included, would probably make the argument that Sweden should belong in amongst the top 5 best metal scenes ever, up there with America, England, Germany, uh, all sorts of other places. Because I
Yeah.
mean, it's just amazing. But how would you best describe the early metal scene in Sweden in the 80s, and like who were some of the bands that you was hearing from your home country that made you think, well, we may actually have something here?
Mhm. Well, in Sweden has always been a big, as you said, a big metal country, and hard rock as well. So we had a scene in the early '80s with some cool heavy metal bands like Axe Witch and Torch and Heavy Load, and so they toured in Sweden in like 80, 81. But then Sweden has always been strong on the more melodic side. So when Europe came through in like 82, 83, a lot of bands started sounding like them, and got hooked on this more melodic thing. And Europe is back in the day. I didn't appreciate Europe, especially since I was more into thrash or speed metal. I think Europe was kind of lame. But when I listen to them with a more mature perspective nowadays, I think they are really good.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I think back then there were more boundaries between the genres. It was sort of a mortal sin to be a thrasher and listen to some more melodic stuff. And the poser syndrome was very strong within thrash,
Mm-hmm.
and we really took hold of that. We really lived for the thrash thing. So Bailoff was kind of the king, and yeah,
Rest in
we
peace.
sort of tried to we looked at this. There was we got hold of was a video combat tour, I think it was called, with
Oh
Venom,
yeah.
Exodus, and Slayer, and that was like 85 or something, 1985, and
Studio
that was
54 in
sort
New
of
York. Yeah.
yeah, it was exactly in Studio 54. It was we were sort of, I really thought it was the best thing we have ever seen. I saw Metallica on the Ride Lightning tour in '84 in a small theater in Sweden. That was really good. And my first attendance at a big concert was Judas Priest in the beginning of '84 in Stockholm. Was packed. It was 10,000 people, and I was like 15 back then.
Wow.
But we when thrash came through, we sort of hooked really hard on that, and we tried to sort of copy those bands that came from the States, especially from the States. We weren't into this German thing. The American bands were much more skilled, I think, and we sort of we thought that was cooler and better, of course. And it felt like it was the origin of thrash, the Bay Area scene, and also the East Coast scene with Anthrax, SOD, and Whiplash, or there were a couple of bands,
Yeah.
So we sort of you try to find everything from the States, especially. I tried to listen to the German bands, but it wasn't my cup of tea back then. I thought Destruction was kind of good, and later on Creator. But in the beginning, it was just the American bands.
Yeah. Like I can remember actually, because I got the Get Thrashed documentary that was out in 2008, which that really opened my eyes to discovering more thrash bands as a teenager. Because like when I was first getting into the heavier side of metal, like early on when I was 6 years old, somewhere in that time frame, my late brother, rest in peace, he got me hooked on to Metallica really early on. Granted, it was the later stuff of Metallica, which I still appreciate to this day. Like the first song I ever heard was I Disappear for Mission Impossible 2. But I really liked the vocals and the guitars, and then it snowballed from there. So they were the first and still remain my favorite band of all time for that reason, and the nostalgia always weighs heavy. But yeah, and then eventually discovering like more Black Sabbath, and then eventually watching like VH1 Classic, watching like countdowns of 40 greatest metal songs hosted by Sebastian Bach from Skid Row, and discovering Slayer, Sepultura, Iron Maiden, more Judas Priest, and all that stuff, and then discovering Megadeth through video game soundtracks, because that was a big gateway for me too. And then by the time I got to, I want to say 8th grade, when I was 14, that's when I discovered Testament, Exodus, and Overkill, and more Anthrax, because of course I had heard the Bring the Noise cover they did years before. And then it just kept snowballing, and then discovering death metal, and then eventually getting into black metal, and then prog and doom and all this. Like overall with metal, every year I just keep discovering more and more and more, to the point where the collection grows more and more and more, because it's like if I get really into something, I want to hunt it down on CD. Granted, sometimes I'll have to order from overseas, but it'll be worth it in the end once it arrives. But that's neither here nor there. But to follow up on what you were saying about the American thrash scene, like I would agree, at least back in the 80s, like the American scene, like, and even the German musicians would admit, yeah, they weren't as good as the American bands in terms of musicianship. It didn't develop until as they were just going along. And of course, better production over here in the States, because I mean, you had here in the States, like one of the big ones being Randy Burns, who did so many seminal albums in the California thrash scene as a whole. And then of course like Bill Matoyer, and then over in the East Coast you had Alex Perialis and Carl Kennedy and all sorts of other producers. And then of course I always thought that like the thrash connection from America to Europe became strong once Metallica went over to Denmark and worked with Flemming Rasmussen, and then it just exploded from there.
Yeah,
and of course,
tough for us. Yeah, it was very tough for us because in Sweden back then there weren't any producers or thrash musicians, so we had to learn ourselves how to do it, and that took a lot. It took a long time for us to find out, the formula
Hmm.
to make it right.
Yeah.
And we still didn't get it right on the first album. We are close, but we had to. If you listen to when I listen to the first album today, it's very it's more like like a demo. It feels like a demo, and we recorded it like a demo, even though we mixed it together with the same guy who mixed Candlemass back then in a big studio in Stockholm. But the recording of the album was very demo, and we sort of produced it ourselves, and we didn't have the knowledge to do that really.
Yeah.
But it's cool to have done it. And Sweden, and we were there from the beginning with the Swedish thrash scene. It was us and a few more bands, but later on we played with all these bands that became big in the death metal scene.
Yeah.
So we played with all those guys. I can't say we were friends or we hung out, but we still played together. And I think Entombed's first gig was together with us and a couple of other bands.
Oh, yeah.
Just yeah. So since Sweden is kind of a small country, at least when you talk about population, it's a small country.
Yeah.
The thrash and the thrash scene or the heavier metal scene was kind of small, so everyone knew each other, and we recognized each other when we went to gigs, when we saw Exodus or when we saw Nuclear Assault or whatever in Stockholm in the late 80s. Everyone sort of recognized each other and sort of so. But I can't say it was a big scene, but there was a scene.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. Like with Sweden, I think most people would say that Sweden's metal scene didn't really grow big until the death metal scene really came into the picture. Because then from there, it was just like, well, who else from Sweden is playing death metal in the '90s? I mean, you got
Mm,
Entombed, Dismember, Grave, Unleashed, Carnage, and then it just kept growing and growing and growing and just splintering into so many places. Which that's
yeah,
one of the big reasons why I personally love Sweden in terms of metal, is just because you can find almost any subset of metal from there and you're going to get high quality stuff with good amount of melody in there too, no matter if it's black metal, death metal, thrash metal, doom metal, what have you. It's just
mm,
it's all there, and I always love and appreciate that about Sweden. Hell, I've even said to myself many times, if only I were rich and I can go on a plane and get over my fear of flying. Well, not really fear of flying, but being less hesitant to fly. I would love to visit Sweden and go to gigs there and buy albums and all sorts of stuff over there just because I always like Sweden more than just the music, but for like everything else too. So
right now Sweden is exploding with thrash bands, both melodic thrash bands like ourselves, but also more combined death and thrash, and I think it's all about the vocals. So
hmm.
when you can play thrash metal music, but if you have a singer who's growling,
Hmm.
it's more like death thrash.
Yeah, like
Um,
Possess, Sepultura.
yeah,
Yeah.
sort of. Yeah, yeah. So, but there's tons of bands right now, and it's very cool right now. I think it's nice to see for we the old timers that we are. It's kind of good to see that the scene is progressing in the right direction. As
Yeah.
you said, back in the day, everyone was growling and everyone tuned down, and everyone was recording at Sunlight or in Gothenburg. It was can't remember the studio in Gothenburg, but this guy Fredrik Nordstrom, I
Oh,
think.
Studio Friedman, something like that.
Friedman, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
So all these bands are, and I really like the Gothenburg sound, sort of. I think
Yeah.
these bands are really good at the Gates, and also the Haunted. more like Slayerish
Oh
nowadays, but
yes. Oh yes.
yeah, really good. And also In Flames, of course, super.
Yeah.
We played with Dark Tranquility 2 years ago, and they were really good as well.
Yeah, funny enough, you brought up At the Gates. As of recording this episode, I've been currently working on a ranking for At the Gates. So I've been going
Mhm.
back to the beginning, and
Yeah.
feels like going through the history of that melodic death metal sound in Gothenburg all at once. Like right now, I just finished up actually last night. I finished up Terminal Spirit Disease. So
Oh,
now I'm
yeah.
heading into the greatest of all time of mellow death, arguably Slaughter of the Soul, and then working my way through the recent
Mhm.
era. Which, man, it still hits hard that Thomas Lindbergh died.
Yeah.
And
He actually was the singer in my younger brother's band. So my younger brother's band is called The Sphere. They played sort of crust combined with very heavy metal. So
that's a first on the show.
yeah.
I just came home from work. Hi.
Hello.
Sorry.
No, so I've been following Thomas's thing for a long time, and the cancer diagnosis and everything.
I
It's
know
very,
that.
very sad.
Yeah, I know that eventually when that new album gets finished, I got a feeling it's going to be an amazing album, but yet it's going to be a heartbreaker at the same time.
Yeah,
So,
probably.
yeah, which I'll be curious to hear more news about that. But moving away from overall Sweden, well, real quick, I would also argue that Sweden's thrash scene kind of got revived whenever like the Haunted and even the Crown started making it big at the end of the '90s into the 2000s. Like
Yeah,
the self-titled Haunted album is amongst my favorite '90s thrash albums, and then 2000s thrash, The Crown's Death Race King has always been a favorite of mine. Like, and yeah, that's definitely more death thrash, more so in the sense of yeah, you get blast beats and the rougher vocals, but musically it's still very much like if I would always describe that album in particular as like if Metallica, Sepultura, and Sodom were all combined into one album. That's Death Race
yeah.
King in my mind. But whereas the Haunted, yeah, definitely very, very, very much Slayer.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, talking about your band, Mezzrow, how did like the original lineup come together, and then everything that led to this album?
This one, yeah. To make a long story kind of short, we had a small scene. We were like 15 people, perhaps, in our town, a small town in Sweden called Nyköping. It's like 10 like 100 kilometers south of Stockholm. And we bought everything, we listened to everything, and but we played in different bands. And then we formed a sort of, we played for fun. We had a fun band called RIP, and we combined Exodus riffs with SOD riffs, and I played the drums and sang at the same time. I was like Dan Beeler, sort of, but I sounded
Awesome.
a bit like Bailoff back then, very screamy, and I think very cool. But we weren't so old, so. That was the time we started figuring out how to play thrash for real. And then we decided that those guys who were in the band together with me in this RIP band, we decided to form a band together, and that was Mezzrow. And this was in like 1987, the fall of 1987. And then we started writing songs and recorded the first demo in February 1988, I think. It was a 3-track demo called Frozen Soul. And that song all those songs, and not 2 of the songs are on Then Came the Killing. It's like Frozen Soul and Prevention Necessary. So those songs were from the first demo.
Yeah.
And we really lived thrash, as I said. That was everything. We sort of, there was nothing else, and all other genres were poserish. Everyone was a poser who didn't listen to thrash. But then we got contacted by a record company called Active Records in 1989, and they wanted to sign us and release the first album. So we were sort of we thought that was it. Now we're in. But it wasn't actually like that. For a while it was, but then we released the album. We should have released the album in the fall of 1989. But the record company made a deal with a bigger British company called Music for Nations, where all the big thrash bands were at the time. They had a sub-label called Under One Flag, and also the big Music for Nations. So Metallica and Anthrax and all those bands had released their debut albums on Music for Nations, and every thrash band from the second wave released their albums on Under One Flag. So we were kind of we thought that was very cool, but the album got delayed for 8 months or so, and so when we released the album in 1990, the death metal wave came rolling. So 1990 was a good year for us, but that was the only year that was good for us, if you think about the first album, because then we got kicked off the label, and there was no future for thrash bands like us. And we tried to get a new one, but we sort of failed there. It didn't work out. So that was, we called it a day in 1993. So that was sort of, the short story about Mezzrow back in the day.
Yeah, like I was listening to stuff off of this not too long ago, and yeah, like definitely the big standouts for me were the title track and Frozen Soul, especially. Like those two songs, I could see why, especially those two songs featured on the live disc on the new album, and also what was
The Cross of Torment.
And yeah, all three of those songs just flat out rip. And like immediately when I heard the title track, I thought at first I had to do a double take for a moment. I'm thinking, did I actually switch over to Testament? Because it reminded me so much of the New Order to a degree. Like it reminded me so much of one of my favorite Testament albums. Definitely vocals very different from Chuck Billy for sure. Like definitely more towards Exodus, but yeah, I was just like, whoa. Yeah, if this would have come out, like you said, at the end of 89, I think it could have made an even bigger splash. Because, yeah, like, late 80s, that was when thrash as a whole across the world was shifting to where it was getting heavier, but also some bands were getting a little more progressive and technical. Like, I mean, Metallica and Justice for All, like, you could argue that's a progressive thrash album. And then, of course, like Slayer, South of Heaven, where they were starting to incorporate more melody and more mid-tempo stuff, and even Testament by Practice What You Preach, starting to experiment with more mid-tempo and more melodies as well. So yeah, it was like right as the 90s were about to hit, yeah, thrash was shifting in a big way.
Yeah,
and I definitely think had this, like you said, come out at the end of 89, I think it would have been an even bigger success in terms of thrash legacy. Because even by, like you said, 1990, death metal takes off almost immediately thanks to Entombed and Carnage and early Tiamat and all that stuff. But funny enough, I was looking at the Active Records roster from back then, and I completely forgot, like, Atheist's first album was on Active back in 89, 90, so yeah, it was like, man, I thought that label was familiar because I thought I could have swore I saw Atheist Piece of Time on there, and then sure enough, it's right there.
Yeah.
But
correct.
Since you pretty much answered the other question I was going to bring up, now was the split. You pretty much answered that with the story of Then Came the Killing. But what led to Mezzrow coming back in 2021?
Yeah, 2021, and that's a kind of a cool story actually, because in the lineup from 1990 we had the original guitarist Staffe Karlsson. He was also the lead guitarist. Is a very nice guy, very cool guy, and he sadly passed away in colon cancer in 2018. And we decided somewhere to I had to think, is that correct? 2018? I think it was 2018. Yeah, it was. Anyway, me and the bass player in today's Mezzrow, Conny, me and him and stuff, we wrote a thrash song together in 2011. And that song ended up at Connie's computer, and then we forgot about it. But when Staffe died, we decided to sort of honor him by doing the song and finish it. So we did. And then I discovered, together with Connie, how fun it was to sing and play thrash again. It was awesome. We sort of hadn't done that for a very, very, very long time. So we decided to, write a few more songs. So I phoned my friend from back in the day, Magnus Söderman. He's the guitarist in today's Mezzrow. He played in a band called Rosicrucian, where I was the vocalist in mid-90s, 1994, I think. And he was in. So we started to write songs. And then all of a sudden we had 12 songs ready. So we recorded all those songs and mixed them and sent them. We started shopping with the songs, and the songs reached Markus Voskien, who was at that time the CEO for Atomic Fire Records in Germany. But he was about to start an own label called Fireflash, and I got a email from him and it said that he was very impressed. So we made a deal with him to make, again, a long story kind of short. So that's Summon Thy Demons. We had yes. There it is. So we released that one in April of 2023, and played at the Keep It True festival in Germany the day before, actually, the release. And that was very special with Summon Thy Demons, since the song that we wrote together with Staffe in 2011, that's Dark Spirit Rising, number 9 on Summon Thy Demons.
Oh, wow.
So that song is actually written by Staffe. It's his riffs. I put lyrics and, did the vocal lines, and then me and Connie recorded everything, in Connie's studio with the vocals. And but anyway, we weren't sure really how this would, if we were good enough. It was we just released an album. We thought it sounded good, but it's always nice to get the first reviews, and especially from you. You thought the album was awesome. And overall, I think the album was reviewed 80 times on different radio shows, websites, bigger magazines, and I think the average score is 8 out of 10, and that's kind of good, I think.
Yeah. Even though it should be higher. But that's just me.
Yeah. But we were really pleased with that one. But it was very special to start playing thrash again, and sort of, the mindset is very important. You have to, get yourself back into the late 80s again, and so your mind is thrash again. And all of us were in the mid 50s, more or less, and we have families and work and everything. But nowadays it's very prioritized to play thrash.
Yeah. Which one other like unsung hero, especially on this album, would be Ronnie Bjornstrom, who not only awesome guitars but awesome producer. Like I first like I didn't know he was in the band already at this point, but I first heard about him because he's been producing the last few Blood Red Throne albums, which I've become very good friends with those guys. They've become one of my favorite death metal bands to listen to nowadays. So how did Ronnie enter the picture?
Well, our bass player Conny was recording and co-producing a Swedish doom metal band called Sorcerer, and Ronnie was the mixing guy and the engineer guy. So they had a lot of contact. So when we needed another guitarist, he was the last, he was the last guy to enter the band, Ronnie. And Conny phoned him, and Ronnie was very keen on joining, since he's a thrash guy. He, as you said, he's been mixing and mastering a lot of different metal genres, and a lot of death metal, of course, since he's Swedish. But he is a thrash guy. And the first thing that he did when he joined the band was to send us a sort of riff bank. It was, tons of thrash riffs with drums attached to them. And we were really impressed by those riffs. So a lot of his riffs are on Some of the Demons, of course, and they're sort of mixed with Magnus riffs, and the music is written by all of us. But it was really cool with all his riffs that he had on his computer, and he sort of sent them all to us. It was like a treasure. That was
hey guys,
cool.
I got this treasure chest of riffs. Let's just pick out the best of the best and let's just plaster it on.
Exactly, like it was like that.
Boom! You looking for this?
Yeah, it was really cool, and we spare a lot of time because we didn't have to write riffs because we had so many already, thanks to him.
Yeah.
So that's why Some of the Demons it was ready kind of quick, I think. And of course, as you said, it's a privilege to have him in the band, since he is both producing, mixing, and mastering. Even though we're producing together, everything.
Yeah.
But it's really good.
Yeah, like definitely the production on here in the mix is so cool. Like it has that 80s spirit to it, but done in a modern sense. Like I could almost compare like the production of this to something like what Arthur Risk did with Power Trip, where it still sounds like the 80s, but with a modern touch to it. Granted, like Arthur, he loves his reverb when it comes to his mixes on whatever he's doing. Like I just reviewed Malignant Aura, which is a death doom band that he did mastering for, and you can definitely tell it's Arthur Risk because of the reverb. Whereas this, not as much reverb, it's a little more drier, but still got reverb to it that I do appreciate. And as I keep stating, especially to me introducing you guys to other people, I always often say, if you love especially Testament and old Metallica, you would love this band, because it's like the perfect middle ground of both. Like, because there's a lot of riffs that I heard on here that definitely remind me of stuff I would have heard on Master of Puppets and Justice for All, Ride to Lightning, but also The Legacy, The New Order, Souls of Black, Practice What You Preach. It's like the perfect amalgamation of my two favorite Bay Area bands. Right there, right then and there. So it's like that also kind of contributed to why I love the band so much, because I'm like, man, it's just like the perfect combination of my two favorite Bay Area bands, but just done in their own way and from Sweden of all places. Because, of course, going
Yeah.
back to talking about like what I was interpreting, what I thought Swedish thrash was going to be like when I first heard about it, I would have assumed it would have been more inspired by the German scene because Europe and all that. But
Yeah.
no, it's definitely like with you guys being more American thrash inspired and so on and so forth. But then again, it's like you notice that even in other areas like Brazil, like when Sepultura started, like they eventually became inspired by both Bay Area and German thrash.
Yeah.
Because like Schizophrenia, especially, I would say that's like the perfect hybrid of Metallica, Slayer, Sodom, Possessed, and Creator, like just all wrapped up in the one. And
Yeah,
that's why,
and then Scott Burns turned it into a real metal album because it was very demo sounding, the early albums, but Beneath the Remains is it's a really good sounding thrash album.
and Arise as well too, like both
Yeah,
of them
yeah.
just tandem of greatness. But now to talk about the new album, Embrace the
Yeah.
Awakening. So yeah, one of the things that I loved a lot about this album was it basically feels like the perfect continuation of this, but the production, I would argue, is bigger, but also a little bit like grislier in the guitars, like not as polished, but still polished. And I really, really love that. And like even the more like clean melodies, like in Symphony of Twisted Souls, like that opening clean riff that
Mhm.
just fades right into just a pummeling chugathon going forward. I'm just like, ugh, like whoa.
That was a good word, chugathon. I like that.
I mean, I use that word a lot, especially with describing death metal, like especially
Yeah.
U.S. death metal, where it's all about the big triplet chugs and all that. I just go, yeah, this is a chugathon right here, like yeah. But what gave the idea for this one to do a second disc of the live tracks from trying to remember which live at Keep It True live.
Yeah.
Where were those live tracks recorded from, actually? Because I forgot.
I was actually they were recorded at the Keep It True festival in Germany. It's an indoor festival, and they are very. The festival is very retro orientated. And we got through the record company. It was him that fixed us the gig. And he's a good friend of the guy who's organizing the Keep It True festival. It's very established in Germany, Europe. Keep It True festival. Everyone, it's sort of you can the venue sort of hold 3,000 people. It was sort of packed when we played. We played in the afternoon. It was broad daylight outside, but it was very special because, especially for me, I hadn't been on a stage for like 30 years. So when I went, I had to have 2 beers before I went to the stage. But then it sort of came natural. We actually did a really good gig. It was the first gig ever with the and it's the same guys who's playing in the band now. So we had the current drummer was actually his first gig with us as well. So it was very fresh. It felt fresh when we sort of entered the stage, and it was very special with the 3,000 people in front of you. And all of them didn't know us, so the set list was sort of mixed between songs from Some of Thy Demons and the old ones.
And I thought it was the perfect mix. And also, I will say too, listening to those live tracks on here, some of the best live recordings I've ever heard in terms of the quality, because you notice like with a lot of bands who do like, oh, here's a bonus track, it's live tracks, the recordings sound rough. Like it was just there to pad out whatever they were doing. Very rare do you come across like live recordings on an album that sound as good as this. Like I would have almost been convinced this could have been like remastered or redone by like Dan Swano, for example.
Yeah.
Because like we all know how much he loves to do a lot of remixes and making sure everything sounds audible or tolerable, which
it's all Ronnie's doing.
Yeah, I figured it was all Ronnie's doing, and he did an amazing job making these live tracks
actually
sound
sounded terrible. It sounded terrible from the beginning. So when we got the files from we were told there was a guy recording the gig, and he asked us if he wanted to do it, and our record company suggested we do it. It would be a cool thing to release just on vinyl from the beginning. So Keep It True Live is a vinyl record from the beginning in just 300 pieces. But anyway, Ronnie got the files and he listened to it and went, "Oh, what the fuck is this?" But then he's very cool in those. So he started working on something, and then the most important thing when you start a bad recording, if you have bad recordings, the most important thing is the drums. You must make the drums sound clean and big.
Yeah.
So he started off from there and built everything from, and it turned out really, really good, I think.
Yeah, I often think like if all live shows could have a quality sound like that, then oh my god, you would almost be hard pressed to decide like if the band sounds better in the studio or live at a show. And I was convinced like, oh my god, if I saw you guys live and it sounded as great as this, I'd be like, oh my god, this is the greatest live performance I have ever seen.
I would actually say that it sounds as good as that live. We're kind of a good live band because everyone except for me are very experienced, and they have played different genres and played a lot of live shows, and especially metal live shows. So we are very tight and sort of relaxed, I think, when we play live. We sound good. We have a good basic sound, I think.
Yeah. But earlier, right before we got started with this, we were talking about CDs and vinyl and whatnot, and you told me that you were, for the most part, vinyl, then went to CD, then went back to vinyl, now back to CD, whereas I'm pretty much only CD, except I do have 2 Metallica vinyl. The one I got as a Christmas gift, and then one I bought at a local Walmart because they did like special editions for Master of Puppets at Walmart that had like a really cool color to them. But probably like we were talking about live albums, for example, like you brought up Unleashed in the East by Judas Priest. Live albums for me are not typically something I go for unless it's like super legendary. Like I only have very few live albums, but like the ones that I got, of course, Unleashed in the East. I got Live After Death, Iron Maiden, Live Legacy, Dissection. I got Live Shit, Binge and Purge, Metallica, and S&M 1 and 2. Dark Roots of Thrash from Testament. That was one of the last Testament. Camera focus, you bastard. There we go. Technical difficulties on my end, it happens, but regardless. Other live stuff I got. Slayer, Decade of Aggression. I was just now remembering. I mean, I got quite a few, but it's not like super crazy. But besides Unleashed in the East, what would be the one live album that you would say is like, oh yeah, if the band sounded like this live, I would go to every show I possibly could go to?
That's kind of difficult. But you know, I grew up during a period when live albums was sort of the best thing you could hear. It was very, very cool to hear this, you know, when the audience were cheering and the band sounded cool, like and especially when they talk between the songs, where you really listen to it when you were like 13 or 14. What did he say there? And sort of copy of things. And I remember my first album that I metal album I ever bought was British Steel. That was the first one in 1980. But the second one was Made in Japan, the American issue with 5 songs. And from there on, I sort of collected all these, Maiden 12-inch live albums or live singles. And the same was with Judas Priest. I have all these 12 inches with 3 songs, 2 live, 1 main track. So live albums for me are very special, but I grew up with that. And the best sounding, I always come back to Unleashed in These, but I wouldn't want my own band to sound like that, of course, because it's not a thrash sounding band.
Right.
And I always thought that Metallica sounded a bit, I don't know. They weren't sounding good on their live recordings, I think.
Early on, yeah.
No, because I don't know what it was, but it sounded a bit, not untight, but sort of, I don't know. I didn't like them anyways. I didn't buy the late live albums with Metallica. I remember buying Jump in the Fire, but that was sort of a studio live. With the Phantom Lord and I don't know, the Seek and Destroy, I think. But that was a fake one. That wasn't recorded for real.
Real quick, not to cut you off, but actually, one I actually found randomly just out of the blue at a flea market, which is about an hour from my house. There's this guy who has like his own stand of all metal stuff, like magazines, DVDs, CDs, T-shirts. I came across this bootleg live album, double disc CD, and it was Metallica's last gig with Dave Mustaine and the first gig with Kirk Hammett. So it's like, I got a piece of history right here. And the recordings were so because, I mean, then again, bootleg quality.
There is a classic gig filmed, I think. You have probably seen that one with Metallica, but that was sort of on the first tour with Raven back in '83. From Chicago, I think. I think it's from Chicago somewhere. The whole gig. It's really cool to see Metallica from back in the day when they were really young. And I also think that when I saw them in 1984 on the Ride the Lightning tour, it was probably one of the best shows I've ever seen because it was you were very close to the band. It's like a club gig almost. I think it was like 900 people and it was packed.
Yeah.
So that was cool. But to answer your question, there was a long story in between. But I think it's tough to find bands that we want to sound like live. It's very tough because I haven't heard a really good live album from a thrash band. I think. Maybe the latest Exodus is kind of cool with Mezzrow from London. Have you heard that one?
I actually have not. I'll have to check that out.
Oh, there is a live album with Mezzrow from '89. That's kind of good, but I don't know. It's tough to answer that question actually because we're sort of kind of picky when it comes to the sound. So I don't really know.
Yeah, like I said, like I don't typically always go for the live album aspect, but I will say if you was to ask me, gun to my head, what's your favorite sounding live album you've heard, and also the performance aspect, it would probably actually nowadays be Bloodbath's Wacken Carnage, since that was their very first live gig altogether, 2005, right when Michael Ockerfeld came back, and that was special. Even the DVD, like the video of it, so awesome seeing he and Dan Swano, Anders Nystrom, Jonas Rinsk, and Martin Axelrod all just pummel that audience with blood and brutality. It was something really magical. And like seeing Dan Swano really get into it, with the crowd, and it's like, and he's one of the reasons, and that's one of the reasons why I love Dan Swano so much. Hell, I had the honor and privilege to interview him on this show back in 2022
Yeah.
because I reached out to him because I'm such a huge fan of his, so much so to the point where we talked about his Moon Tower solo album he did in '98, and how I had told him, like, hey, I'm a CD guy. I've been trying to hunt this CD down at a reasonable price because you go to Discogs and it's like, oh, you want a good copy of Dan Swano Moon Tower original press? $200. Sounds completely unreasonable. But yeah, Discogs can be a pain in the booty for sure when it comes to that. But I asked him, like, would there be any chance of Moon Tower getting reissued? And he's like, well, funny you mentioned that. Because, like, and I like how he presented himself, like, funny you mentioned that. I'm actually working out a deal with Century Media to reissue all my stuff. And took a few years, but finally next month, Moon Tower's getting reissued, and I went ahead and pre-ordered that because that's one of my favorite prog albums, prog metal, prog rock, prog death metal albums I have ever heard. So I'm like, yeah, like so far this year, I've been going crazy with pre-ordering stuff because so many good things music-wise are coming up, like new Immolation, new Monstrosity, new Hell Ripper, which, ironically enough, tomorrow I'm interviewing James from Hell Ripper for a third time on this show, which he's become a good friend of mine too, and very much a kindred spirit, I would say, to us, because he's a massive thrasher, but he also loves his black metal, he loves his death metal, and he loves his old school classic heavy metal. So, and that new single for Hell Ripper, Hunderpressed, that almost sounds like if Voivod was a blackened thrash band, because there's a lot of Voivod, like, atonal dissonance on the guitars, which I've really latched onto in recent years. But yeah, it's just amazing how, like, thrash, especially nowadays, it just gets infused in so many places to kind of keep it evolving. Like blackened thrash being the big thing right now, especially with, like, Hell Ripper. Even though I wouldn't necessarily call his band straight up blackened thrash, because there's a lot like that Exciter and Motorhead speed metal, and also a lot of Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, and Bathory in there too. So it's not so I wouldn't limit it just to that, but like even like R Noir and Absu, Skeleton Witch from actually right here in my home state of Ohio, proud Ohio band, and I wish they would put out something new, but it's been 8 years, and that last album I wasn't too keen on, but hopefully if they come back, get back to the blackened thrash of the old and just really rip faces off and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But progressive thrash or technical thrash really coming alive now, especially now with Corner finally releasing their new album after God knows how long, and that album was awesome too. And I remembered, funny enough, whenever you saw my year-end list for 2025, and you were like, yeah, it's crazy that you're the first one to put us above Corner on these lists.
Yeah.
And it was neck and neck. It was neck and neck, I tell you, but it was so close.
It's Corners is their sort of revival has been very strong here in Europe. And I think they're going on a US tour, West Coast tour, right now.
Yeah.
Together with Heathen.
I wish they would do a Midwest tour and come over to my home state, but we'll see about that. But yeah, there's just so many shows I wish I can go to if only I were outside of my area. Or one of my dream shows to go to is Maryland Death Fest, but that's like 10 hours away, so I'd probably either have to go with somebody on a long road trip or have the balls to fly finally and just go to Baltimore and go there, because like I see the reputation of that festival, like you get everything from death metal to black metal, thrash metal, doom, and it's like it seems like that's the perfect festival for bands doing like reunion shows or doing like classic albums in full. Like funny enough, this year with Maryland Death Fest, Sarcophago is back together and they're doing an old school set, which I'm like, who would have thought in a million years that band would be back together to do a one-off gig at the biggest underground metal festival here in America as of now? So
we actually played with the Corner in August in in Bulgaria, a small festival. The festival was like 2,000 people perhaps or something like that, but they were really, really good. They played. It was one band between us, so we played, and then another band, and then came Coroner. So we were in the audience checking them out. So it was really good. It's cool to see them.
Yeah, like Coroner would definitely be a band I wish I could see live.
Mhm.
But like if you was to ask me like who's the number one band you want to see live, for me it's always going to be Metallica. I got this close to seeing them in 2017 had I known this show took place, because I found out after the fact, but if I had known, I could have been like, oh, I wish I could have went to this show. It was Metallica, Avenged Sevenfold, and Gojira at the arena in Cincinnati, because I think Metallica was still touring on Hardwired, Avenged Sevenfold was touring on The Stage, and Gojira was touring on Magma, all coming out in 2016. And because Metallica and Avenged Sevenfold being my two big bands that got me into metal, and then of course Gojira, I become a massive fan over the past several years. That would have been a magical night, but I didn't know about it until after the fact, and I'm thinking to myself, son of a...
Yeah.
I almost got
Metallica.
to see real quick.
Yeah.
I almost even got to see Iron Maiden on my birthday in 2019, but time constraints.
You were very spoiled. I was very spoiled, or you were very spoiled as a youngster back in the 80s. I mean, I got to see Metallica in 84. I saw the last gig with Cliff in 86. I missed Justice for All. Queensryche was special guests, I think. But then I saw them on the Black Album tour, and then I saw them at a big arena in Sweden with King Diamond and Merciful Fate. So it was, but I think when it got to that level, to that point, playing arenas, I think they sort of lost it a bit. And that was also with Load and Reload. I hate those albums. It's sort of no, that's not my thing. For me, Master of Puppets is a Bible, sort of. If you could combine Master of Puppets with the Helloweights, perhaps.
Oh yes.
With a touch of Raining Blood, that would be the oof.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right here, one of my only two vinyl. Dusty. But yeah. This was a Christmas gift to myself. After I got in Justice for All, I went to Walmart and I bought this because they had the like brown colored vinyl, like very much in the go back in. Matching the color of the covers, so that was pretty cool. Yeah, I agree with you on Master of Puppets. I mean, that's my favorite album ever, is Master of Puppets. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have become a metalhead. So, yeah, that still holds a special place in my heart.
Yeah, it sort of has everything. Good songs, a good dose of progressive thrash, very good sound. The sound-wise, it's very special. I think they have worked a bit with the sound, and Flemming Rasmussen, who's been producing both Ride Lightning and the Master of Puppets, has done a really, really good job. And I can't understand why they didn't use him from the beginning on Justice for All, because that album would have sounded a lot different with him at the helm.
Yeah, I always look at Injustice for All. It's like, I love the guitar tone on that album. Like, that is one of my favorite tones to hear, because it's just so crunchy and heavy. Like, arguably the heaviest they sounded up to that point. But yeah, like the drum tones, not the best, but not the worst. And then, of course, the big thing, you can't hear the damn bass.
Exactly.
And it's sad. Yeah, if they would have definitely stuck with Fleming from the very beginning, then I think it would have been definitely something to behold.
And of course, Jason Newsted isn't Cliff Burton, but still, that he would have contributed in his way with a good bass sound. it's sort of a bit annoying. But it wasn't. Justice for All was never my record. I think the songs are a bit too long, and I think there are really good songs like One and The Black End, but
Dyer's
there are
Eve.
also very boring songs. You start. No, it's much not songs that are more than 8 minutes or even 6 minutes gets a bit boring.
Well, definitely depending on the band for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, at least with Newstead, they more than made up for his presence on the Black album. Like, you can definitely hear the bass, and it's awesome.
Yeah.
Like, actually, I have a bass guitar that actually was a gift from my late grandfather, and he gave it to me literally like months before he passed away. I haven't played on it for a while because I gotta get strings replaced, but I can play the opening bass line of The God That Failed off the Black album because my friend Scott, who is a bass player himself and played in bands, and he's from New York, I kind of call him my metal and wrestling dad because he could be my dad because of his age, but he played the bass line to The God That Failed on a random live stream of his own, and then I'm like, how about I try and learn it so I could play it, but I probably have to look at a tab again to play it again because it's been a while. But yeah, like me, when it comes to like me trying to do instruments or whatever, it's like I can play certain lines on bass, I can play drums not well, and sing not well. Because I honestly I hate the sound of my own voice when I hear it back, because I can hear how I sound right now and I think I sound all right, and then I listen back to it on video and I'm like, that sounds nothing like me. I don't get how that works with me. I don't get how that works, but it's
often like that when you hear yourself talking or whatever, but you get sort of used to it when you sing. You have to.
Right. But funny enough, I was wow, my voice cracked. Yeah, that's another thing with me. Voice cracks constantly. I don't know why, but it happens. But one resource I kind of did discover you guys from was the Metal Archives, which I've talked about with other guests. It's like, objectively, it's an awesome website to discover bands and albums you're missing, but there's a lot of problems with it that myself and other metal YouTubers have talked about, and it's kind of cliche at this point. But when I was looking up Mezzrow's page on Metal Archives, the big thing I always go to on there is the similar artist tab whenever I look up to find like bands that sound similar, and of course, the first band that comes up is Testament. Makes absolute total sense. Zentrix is up there too, which I could see that as well. Metallica should be higher, but of course they gotta get more votes. I see like Annihilator, Evil, Defiance, Evil Dead up there, but there's a lot of known bands that I think could be on that list higher, like Exodus, and I would even say Death Angel, Heathen, Slayer to an extent, like early Slayer. Yeah, it's just people got to get on there and vote more to get bands higher up on lists. Because because like hell, even with Gojira, the first band I associate with Gojira in terms of sounding similar is Morbid Angel. But you go on their page, they're in the top 20, but they're low, like far too low. It's like they should be either near or at the top. Like Meshuggah's at the top, which I can see that because of the syncopation, but those riffs on especially the old Gojira stuff, those are so Morbid Angel. But but of course, that's Metal Archives for you. It's all inconsistent and frustrating at times. Very, very frustrating. Like, how the hell do you have, like, Rush on there, but you don't have Uriah Heep on there?
Exactly.
Yeah, Archives, get your stuff together. That's all I'm going to say. But time for a little lightning round, so to speak, of just random questions I'll think of and just quick answers. If you could front any other thrash band, what would it be and why?
Well, I think it would be Testament for sure. They have always been a big influence when it's come to thrash. and it was actually the first band from the second wave that really influenced us together with Exodus, I think. Those bands that came forth in the Bay Area at the mid 80s, they are more inspiring, I think, nowadays than perhaps Slayer and Metallica. From the beginning, it was the opposite. But I think Violence and Forbidden and Legacy or Testament, those three, perhaps a bit Death Angel as well. But those bands were really, really big, I think, for us in the mid 80s. So Testament is the answer.
All right. If you could have written a big four thrash song, which song would it have been?
That's also kind of hard to answer, but
Yeah.
I'll go with At Dawn They Sleep with Slayer from Hell Awaits, I think. Really cool song.
Yeah, a lot of mid tempo and gallops on that one.
Yeah, that's
a really good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the tough part with trying to do the lightning round and think of questions off the top of my head. If you could, man, you know what? I'll just skip the lightning round because those are the two I want to do. But actually, funny enough, I wanted to ask you because we always on my show we always have a big thing with myself and some of my other hosts talking about other stuff besides metal. But for you, pro wrestling fan by any chance?
Sorry?
Are you a pro wrestling fan by any chance?
No. I'm a soccer fan.
Fair enough. Yeah, pro wrestling is the big conundrum with me and some of the other hosts, but
okay,
that's because that was also a big reason why I got into metal was through pro wrestling because it just kind of went hand in hand back, especially
it's
in the
big
90s.
in the US. I understand that it's sort of really big.
Oh yeah.
And it's very theatrical, and it's very, it's also kind of funny. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But yeah, like it was through like them doing like for their pay-per-views, pick random metal songs as their theme, and I would get into that song and then discover the band, or even some of the wrestlers within the pro wrestling business are huge metal fans themselves, like Triple H, I mean, mostly known for Motorhead because Motorhead did his music for so long.
Yeah.
But he's a big Metallica guy and so on and so forth. But that's neither here nor there. I guess because I ran out of lightning round questions, I guess we'll just end off on this note, and that is, what is the future for Mezzrow? Like, already writing stuff for a new album, touring possibilities? What's next?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked, and it's we have actually begun writing the next album. I've written most of the lyrics. All the titles are sort of ready. Perhaps we'll modify them a bit, but most of them are ready. Magnus and Ronny has written tons of riffs. So now we have to put them together, but we will release 2 new songs from the Embrace the Awakening era. We recorded them at the same time. It's leftovers from Embrace the Awakening, but they are not bad in any way. They got sort of voted out of this album because we wanted a certain order of the songs and that the songs would fit with each other. And those 2 songs that we will release are more, you'll understand when you hear them, but they are really, really good, I think. And we have also rewritten them a bit. And actually we had 4 songs. One was canceled. It sort of fell apart, and we used different parts for the new songs that will be on the next album. And one of the songs will be on the next album. It's a song called Author of All Your Pain.
Sounds like an awesome title already.
Yeah, it's more. The titles are very cool, actually. I think, and that's sort of that's very important. I think the titles. I've been working very hard on the last album as well. both on Summon Thy Demons and Embrace the Awakening, I think has both of them have cool titles. Because I think, like I did back in the 80s, I always looked at the titles, and the title of the album was really important as well. And but we hopefully, if everything goes well, we will release the new album in the beginning of 2027, perhaps February or something like that.
That would be awesome.
So the singles will come. The first single will come, like, I don't know, October, perhaps November, October, November. Yeah.
I'm definitely going to be looking forward to that for sure.
Cool.
Well, funny enough, you was bringing up song titles. Like I just now was thinking about this too, about bands with the most ridiculous or insane song titles. Like Incantation would be one of the first ones. Like, how the hell did they come up with some of this stuff? Like Unto Infinite Twilight, Majesty of Infernal Damnation. Like, where do they come up with this?
Yeah.
Or early Carcass with their freaking medical terminology, like oxidized razor masticator. Like, how do they do this? Because I struggle with even, like, because I used to get into a mode of writing random titles and lyrics of songs that I would have been able to picture, but a lot of times I would look back on it and think, this is like really corny and cheesy. But if you want to know, before we go, a couple of recommendations for you that's outside of the thrash realm, but stuff that I really enjoyed that I think you could possibly get into as well. One's a death metal band, and one I call comedy metal because the lyrics and the titles are just ridiculous, but the music's fun. But the death metal band, Time Ghoul, is a band because well, not really like in a funny way, but more in like a sci-fi way. But they were a death metal band from Missouri back in the early 90s, and they broke up and they only did 2 demos, but they're legendary demos now because nowadays you get a lot of death metal bands that kind of are inspired by Time Ghoul, the biggest one being Blood Incantation. So it's that like progressive, technical, doomy death metal. It's almost like if Morbid Angel and Suffocation had a child that was really into prog, doom, and black metal, and the vocals sound like Dallas Toller Wade, formerly of Nile. Like, it's that evil growl, and it's awesome. But the comedy band, Psycho Stick, they are so freaking funny. Like, my buddies from Thralls of Metal, that YouTube channel, who also from Ohio, they saw them at Full Terror Assault in Illinois in 2023, and they started off their show by playing the, quote, shortest set in the world, where they played for 7 seconds, and then walked off stage, and the crowd's chanting, 8 more songs! 8 more songs! And the frontman's in the back with them, and the frontman's on the mic saying, no. Beat it. Buy a shirt. And then they come back on stage and play the whole set. But their songs are so hilarious. They do like parodies of other metal genres, particularly making fun of deathcore and the whole gent thing. But like, it's gloriously dumb, but it's fun. Like, my favorite song of theirs, The Root of All Evil. And you're thinking, okay, what's this going to entail? It's about going to the dentist. Like, even having dental skits in there, like in between verses, where they talk to the lady doctor, and like even the ending of the song is the frontman getting the thing. He goes, "This fucking sucks," and then the trill while the riff's going, "Ow, ow, 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 ow," like he's trying to sing the ow pain. It's so funny. I played that song for my mom in the car once. She about peed herself laughing. But musically, they're really, really talented. It's like there's some thrash to it. There's also some hardcore. There's some groove to it, but it's fun. They're really, really fun, and their costumes, like their hats, are ridiculous. And they do like comedy skits on YouTube and such. It's the whole 9 yards. But that's neither here nor there. But But anyways, thank you all so much for watching, and thank you, Ulf, for joining me on this day, and this was an honor to get to have you on the show to further prove why this band needs more fans and needs more people talking about them. I don't want to be just the only one. know,
Glad
my
to be
best.
here. It was cool. Yeah, it was very cool. And thanks for your support, Levi. It's very important for us. And we'll be back very soon with some new music.
And I can't wait to hear it because, I mean, you guys have been on a tear with the last two for sure. But, so yeah, for those who want to check out Mezzrow, just search them up online and check out their stuff and pick up their albums. Totally worth it. So, as far as what's coming up next, as I brought up earlier, the next episode next week, we'll be talking to James McBain from Hellripper for a third time. So, he's going to be entering all-time legendary status on the show, being on the show 3 times. So, that's going to be very fun to talk about the new album and so on and so forth. Hopefully we'll get some other guests on here and maybe even do some special episodes in between to kind of keep the flow going. Getting close to episode 100, and that's going to be something. That is definitely going to be something when we get there. What am I doing with my life? But anyways, thank you all so much for watching. But until next time, as I always say, keep your horns high and your dreams wet.
See ya.